Okay, so this is what we've been building. This is just a Photoshop template I found online. Just trying to hide this thing. View, what? View extras, turning that line off. Okay, so yeah, this Photoshop template I found that gives us the ability to pull little assets and all that kind of stuff from for our code. Now, I need to open up our code here, so bear with me for 1 second. Instagram. And we'll zoom this for you. Let's take a look at where we're at. Okay, and I'm just gonna open up my inspector and turn it to mobile mode so we can see stuff a bit better. And let's put this guy on the bottom. Okay. So this is what we've built so far, and I think it's looking pretty good. We have our lovely stories here, it's scrollable. We have Instagram posts, we have our header, some buttons from Font Awesome. We threw in and copy and pasted a few posts so we could get the scrolling, and we got this lovely tab bar that is sticky. And we'll close some stuff here. And yeah, at the end of the class, we were kind of talking about what we would do next. And I think we all came to the conclusion that let's just build out another page. So I'm going to go into Photoshop for a second, and I'm going to try and find this other page that I have somewhere. Coding Camp, Instagram. Here we go. And specifically, I'm looking for the one other screen that comes on here, the profile screen. So this is fun. We'll take a quick glance at everything here. So we have a header, again, slightly different. It doesn't have the Instagram logo. It has text instead, as well as a back button here and this little guy. We've already done something like this, but we definitely haven't done a button. So that'll be fun. Got our bio, nice little link, some of these guys, and photo grid. So that's what we're going to kind of work on today. I'm going to open up the code, and just as a quick refresher, our code's kind of broken into 3 pieces here. We have everything that's in our header, and that was a fixed position element, so it doesn't scroll with the content. We have our story list, and that's everything that essentially, sorry, so there's 4 pieces. There's the story list, which is this right here. There's the post list, and that's all these guys right here. And then the very bottom, we have a tab bar. And if we were to look at our CSS, we've broken it up in a similar way. We have our, our header, we have our tab bar, and we put the tab bar at the top because it's kind of a global thing that's going to be on many different pages. And then we get into all the stuff to do with posts, which, we got, what are we at now? We got 288 lines of CSS. So it's becoming a bit of a project here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a new file, a new HTML file, and this will be called profile.html. And to start things off, let's copy and paste our everything up to our body tag and go to our bottom and essentially copy and paste that, just so we have a nice blank slate to work with. Now, if I go over here, I can just change this in the URL bar to say profile.html, and we get it. It looks great. Everyone watching at home is super stoked right now. Yeah, we have an empty page, but there's some stuff happening here. If we view the source of it, we are including our reset, we're including our styles, and we're including our font awesome. But because we have no HTML, nothing is being rendered. So let's fix that. Let's start with the header. So I'm going to copy and paste our header from the other, from the index HTML, and paste it right in here. And simply doing this, we're going to get the header right back in, and all is good. But there's some differences here. For instance, if we look at our Photoshop file, it's a back button, and I think currently we have the camera. So we want to change this. And if I believe the name of this is chevron left. I'm going to confirm that. Nope. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Chevron left. And there we have this here. Now, again, it's not the exact same icon in the Photoshop file because we're just using Font Awesome library to keep things simple. But, you know, at some point we may go through and rip all those icons out and use them. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is the fact that the header has the word, it should just be normal text, not the actual logo on this screen, as you can see here. So I could, you know, change this to say username, but nothing's going to change because we've overridden headers to essentially have the text indented all the way and replace it with the logo. So what we need to do is kind of make a different class for this, or at least augment the class. So I'm going to go back to our original page, and we'll go back here as well to this. In my header, I'm going to add a secondary class called header with logo, like that. That on its own won't change anything. But if we go to our CSS and we look for the header, we're seeing that specifically a header. Sorry, did I do this in the right spot? Sorry, you know what? Changing this. We're actually going to add it. We're going to make this a little bit simpler. Just add the class to here called logo. And that, again, won't change anything. But essentially what I'm getting at here is I want H1s by default just to put the text like we have on that profile page. But in the rare case where we say the logo one, we're going to do something different. So I'm going to copy and paste this and do an override specifically for logo. So everything in here is good except for a few things. Actually, a lot of these things. What I'm going to do is move all this. So the text, the telling it to text indent, telling it to use a specific background image, giving it a width and height, and telling it how the background image should resize is all going to live in this. If I save this now, because we've already in the HTML said that it's H1 with a logo, this should still be the same thing. And that's great. But let's go back to our news page. So because this one doesn't actually have the class of logo, and I can prove that by giving this again a class of logo, and it should go back to how it was. It is just going to render by default. So that's better. We have text. However, this isn't perfect yet because I feel like that text size is wrong. So we're just going to make the default text size instead of 24, maybe like 16. And we can kind of figure that out by going here. It looks like they're using 34. So if we divide that by 2, that's 15, 16, 17. 17, and there's a font weight of bold on it. There we go. So we have that. We have the username written there. And if we were to still go back to our old site or our old page, we're using both. So this was nice. It's modular because we are using essentially the same class and just adding in an H1 with a class of logo when we want it to display the logo. Otherwise, it'll display as expected. Now, something looks a little bit funny here. I feel like it doesn't quite look centered, but I could be totally wrong. Let's just, I'm just going to measure some stuff here. So this across here is 160. This across here is also 160. Okay, I think it's just because there's 2 buttons here. It doesn't look quite centered. So that's good. We'll just keep it as is. Okay, the other thing is there's only 1 button over here. So on this page, we can get rid of television and just see if that makes things feel more centered. And we need that 3 dots. And we've used that 3 dots before. So let's just try and find it rather than me looking on Font Awesome. If we look in one of the posts, it's called FA ellipse H. And we will change that here. And now we have the dots. So going back to our Photoshop, looks basically, I mean, the icons are different, font looks a little bit different, but more or less it's the same. Did I do that math right? 34 divided by 2. It is indeed 17. Okay. So there we go. We have our updated header, and it looks pretty good. Yeah. The only thing is that the height of this is different. And that's because our logo is taller and it's actually pushing things down. So what I'm going to do is actually look at our CSS here and see H1 this one we gave it a height of 30. So I'm actually going to keep this consistent and move it to all H1s and say I want a height of 30. That way these continue the same thing. Now the only thing is this text is not being centered vertically. So a nice trick for that when you have a single line of text is you can give it a property called line height. And we've used that before, usually in paragraphs to kind of give more space. When you make the line height the same as the height, it essentially will center your text within its box. So that looks pretty good. It's not perfect, you know, if we measure this, it's not right. So I'm just going to we're just going to hack this for now and do a margin top of -4 pixels. No, but oops, I meant to do it on the H1 by general. No, I'm just going to hack this. Let's do top -1. One sec. Let me make it, then I'll explain what's happening. There we go, -3. So there's this trick you can do on relative positioned elements where you can give something a top or a bottom or a left or a right. And that essentially moves it up accordingly. The nice thing about this trick is it doesn't actually affect the layout. It's essentially saying, you know what, my margin and my borders and all that stuff is going to stay exactly where it is, really just the contents being moved. So I did it that way because I don't really want to affect the rest of my layout. Now, if we went over here, we're going to see it got shimmied up too. So on this, we're going to just say top of 0, and that will override it to keep it where it should be. So now stuff looks nice and centered. Just a finessey nitpicking thing. And in fact, if I was doing this from scratch, probably, and we talked about something called Flexbox last class. And we would probably, and maybe we will do a refactor of this at some point where we actually use Flexbox. So they make centering things vertically a lot less painful. Okay, looking good. What's next? Well, let's look at the Photoshop file. We got one of these big guys. Okay, here we are going to, in fact, for this whole page, just to get in the habit of Flexbox, which I highly recommend using for layout. And the only reason we didn't use it at the start is because I feel like you have to kind of know the principles and the underlying stuff and the way things used to be done to really understand the value and what it's doing here. But we're going to try and use Flexbox everywhere here because it's a lot better than floating things. It helps with centering things, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to take a stab at right now doing this whole chunk. And we're going to start with the HTML of it. Oops, can't use that shortcut in Photoshop. So wow, so much stuff open. Just going to make it so we can see more or less everything. We'll go to our HTML. And what did we do here? So we had our header. So we had our header and then we just went right into it. Okay. So after our header, which closes right there, we're going to make a new div with a class of, I'm going to call it profile top. Okay. Now in here, we are going to make two containers. One will be called, I'm going to call it profile top left and profile top right. Inside the left, we're going to pull some HTML that we've already done from our stories. And I'm going to just grab this and paste into here. I'm going to get rid of the username part because all we really want is this image and this thing right here. And I'm going to rename this to profile avatar container. And we'll have to style all that and we'll do some copy and paste and it'll be great. Then we have the image and that's going to be this one inside here, which has like the border radius. And then there'll be the actual image itself. Okay, so we got that part figured out. I'm going to space these out and we're going to do the top right, profile top right. And here we need, I'm going to call it profile stats. Why not? And we're going to call this profile CTA. CTA, call to action, essentially means, you know, an action a user can take. And I'm actually going to rename this to container and container. So essentially we have three things that are containers, just to kind of keep things consistent. Top left, you know what? I've changed my mind. just gonna get rid of container. Keep it short. Keep it silly. Okay, now inside our stats, we're going to make something with a class of stat. And I'm going to use a span tag, just so that we can style this to be bigger, to have the actual text in it. And then we're going to just write the word posts. And I'm going to copy and paste this a few times. They have 2,592.82 followers. I'm changing it. And 809 followings. Okay. Then inside our CTA, we're going to make a, I'm going to make this an anchor tag. So we won't worry about the href. I'll just do a number sign for now. And it's going to have a class of button. And I'm going to call it also button dash wide. This button is going to be wide. Then we're going to have another one that's just a normal button. We'll put the text follow in here. And we'll put we're going to need an icon. So we'll use an I, give it a class of FA, font awesome, and FA dash chevron. Chevron down will be fine. We could probably find a better icon because it's not really a chevron, it's a triangle, but this will be fine. Okay, going back to here, we should see a big change. Boom. See that icon? That icon will work for our roses. Okay, we have our HTML. That's all we need. Let's open up our styles. I'm going to divide out this a bit so we can see both at the same time. And we're going to go all the way to the bottom, and we're going to make a new section called profile. Okay. We're going to start with the profile top. So we're just going to go at a fast pace and copy and paste profile top. Currently, what do we need to worry about here? We're just going to put some padding on it. So basically, it has a padding top of what looks like 22. Now divide by 2 because this image is at 2x. So it's going to be like 11 pixels, and the padding left and right is 20. So wait, let's just make them the same. Height of 20. So I'm just going to make a global padding of this whole box as 10 pixels. And if we go back here, we'll see everything should kind of be spaced out now. Yay. It's the little things in life. Then we'll copy this guy and we'll say specifically profile top left inside of profile top is going to do something. And let's actually, you know what? Let's do something a little bit differently. We're going to stub out essentially all of our CSS selectors first. So profile top left, profile top right. I like to do this sometimes, specifically right now. Okay, and I'm literally just going to go and I'm going to copy this. You'll see there's a pattern emerging. I'm essentially replicating, the same HTML structure in CSS, knowing that I will probably need to style all these things. Image, img tag. Okay, so that deals with everything there. And then we can start with the top right, and we'll copy and paste this a few times and make this say .profile stats. Doing this now is tedious, but it will mean we can get through the rest of the stuff a bit faster. Profile top stats dot stat. And then we're also going to want to style the span inside a stat. And then that gets us all the way to here. So we can grab this again and go .profile CTA. Okay. Now I'm not going to stub out the button here. And the reason is, this is the first time we've done a button in the Instagram clone that we're making. And so, I haven't seen all the pages that we may end up designing, but I imagine there'll be other buttons. So rather than styling specifically buttons in here, and we may have to make some changes and overrides to be like, make this button, do something different in this context, in which case we would stub it out here. I'm actually going to scroll all the way to the top. And we have this global area, which we barely use, but we're going to stub out our dot button here. And then we're also going to stub out dot button wide for future use. If we were to refresh now, nothing will change because all we've done is select things. We haven't actually written any CSS rules. So let's do that. Okay, so starting with actually profile top. Okay, I'm going to do some debugging here. It's always fun. I'm going to give some things some background color just so we can see where these things are. So let's just start with the top left and top right. I'll make this one say blue. Oh. So right now, our profile top left is really this whole big box. And our profile top right is this big blue box, big blue box. And that's because they're block level elements. They're just going to take the width of their parent and break to a new line, just as we've done many, many times. However, we want this to act a little bit differently. So introducing again, Flexbox. So rather than like styling each of these things and having to float them and deal with clearing that we've done before, all we have to do is on profile top, go display flex, as opposed to the default, which is display block. Now, as soon as I do this, you're going to see that anything that is a direct child of profile top, so that is the thing that we've styled red and the thing that we've styled blue, is going to be a flex item, meaning it's going to try and fit left to right. And it does. So you see the red goes here and the blue goes here. So now things are in line, and that's really nice. So that's all I think we have to do there. So let's continue this process and get this guy styled. So we could write this from scratch, but we've already, this is, just for a recap, this is this part here. So we've already kind of done this in a couple cases. So I'm gonna go grab it from, I think we called it story list item. Here we go. And I'm going to, I'm gonna actually open these side by side. So this is nice in VS Code. You can have the same file open in two different windows or panes or whatever these are called. And I'm gonna seek out and find this just so we can kind of use it as a reference because we don't necessarily need everything. So top left, we'll just keep as is for now, but the actual avatar, which is essentially the story list item, we want to give it a width. And let's just do exactly how we had it before, a width of 68 pixels. Then the image itself, I'm going to copy and paste all these things. So giving it that background color of white, giving it the padding, giving it that little border, giving it a border radius, and that makes it a circle and that. Let's save and see how it looks. Getting there, but in fact, it looks even worse. So what's happening? Well, our image is not being contained within this little circle. And that's because we do have to tell the image to actually, similar to here, have a width of 100%. We do that and it's okay, but we also have to tell the image, you need a border radius as well. And there we go, it's looking a bit better. That's kind of it. Now in the mockup here, we have this thing that we might as well also put in. So the way we did that is we essentially added a class called gradient circle on the image. So I'm going to copy and paste this guy and do dash gradient circle. And I'm going to copy these exact same things. And if we refresh, nothing's going to change. And that's because we need to add that this is like a class we can add, a helper class, essentially, we can add to our HTML. So in this case, right here, which will then add that. Now, having this red here makes it hard to see. So I'm going to just change this to a CCC, which is just a nice light gray, just so we can see what's actually happening here. So that's pretty good. The only thing is, based on my eye, at least of this is definitely bigger. So we need to handle that. So let's find out the height of the whole thing, including the circle. So it looks like 194 roughly. And if we take 194 and we divide it by 2, we get 97. I'm going to call it 96. I like working with even numbers or base 2 numbers. 96, I think, is both of those. Okay, so how do we do this? So first of all, yeah, we said the whole width. So right now this is at 68 and this is 55. So we're going to have to play with the numbers here. So I'm going to make this 96 just to see what happens. And you're going to see that all that really happened was that area got wider. Oh, you know what? I see what's happening. This is where we should have 96. So if I refresh that, it gets bigger. And we want to make the width of this box. In fact, because we're going to be using Flexbox now, we might not even need to set a width there. Yeah, we don't. It will just automatically go beside it. So we can get rid. We're going to keep this stubbed in, but we don't have to necessarily touch it. Okay, so now it's bigger. It seems better. I'm going to get rid of this background color just like that. Okay, let's go down to where our blue is. So the very first thing is there needs to be some space between these things. And it looks like somewhere roughly like 20 pixels on the 2x, so 10 pixels. So we're just going to give this a margin left of 10 pixels. And with Flexbox, using things like margin is nice because it will allow it to move over, but it's not going to, this will keep a nice width and not be pushed to the next line. So yeah, we can just do that. Let's get rid of our blue. Okay, so a bit happening here. Yeah, actually, yeah, we're almost there. Now here's where Flexbox, so far Flexbox has a little value for us, and we'll put these things beside each other. But where I see the real value happening is the fact that this is kind of complicated. There's like this row, and inside that row, there's columns, and then there's this row, and then there's sort of like columns. So we'll see the real value, I think, here. Okay, so first of all, we want our stats container to also be display flex. And what we're going to see now are they get put beside each other. Wow, that kind of just like almost automatically happened. That's great. And we want to style our stats. So let's give them a font size of, and I'm just going to guess for now, 12 pixels. Cool. And I'm going to want to style that span as well. So that has a bigger font size of maybe like, we can look at these fonts later, 18 pixels, and I believe it has a font weight of bold. There we go. Now, based on our design, these guys need to break. Now, because we're using a span, maybe a span wasn't actually the right choice here. And in fact, I'm going to say it's not. Because if these were divs, they would already be breaking to the next line. So let's go and refactor these spans. And we're actually just going to make them a div. So I just did something without explaining it, but many text editors, VS Code being one of them, something that will save a lot of time when you're doing these kinds of things is you can select text and do Command D or Control D on Windows and start selecting other similar or other things that are exactly the same. Meaning I can select a bunch and then just start typing and it's going to do it in all of them. So that's really nice and handy. And I'm just going to, I'm going to give this a class of accent or no, let's just call it like number. That's what it is. So I'm going to paste that there, paste that there, paste that there. So now that they're divs, they do go to the next line. And we need to now change this to .accent. So we want to say the accents will have this. Oh, I didn't say, wait. Oh, sorry, not accent. We changed our mind about that number. No, that's looking all right. We also want, so one of the advantages of Flexbox is that you can kind of like space things out clean to the eye. So on the container, where we did the display flex right here of the stats, we're gonna go, I think it's justify content. And I'm going to show you again a few things. So I'll do justify content center. Nope, that's the wrong, sorry, that's the wrong one. Might be line items. Align content. Oh, I see what's happening. Shoot, okay, the problem is this guy right here that we're saying to align, it already has a width of, its width is already its content width. So no matter how we try and align it, it's going to have issues. So we need to make the width of this larger. So to illustrate this, I'm just first going to do this simple thing of just saying, let's give this a width of 200 pixels. Maybe bigger. Am I doing this in the wrong spot? Okay, cool. So then if we change this to justify content. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let me make this a little bit smaller. And I'm going to give this a background color for us all, like yellow. Okay, so our actual like stats is this yellow thing. And we've done justify content center. So justify content is super helpful. For instance, flex start, which is the default, will put things at the very start of its container. Flex end pushes it right to the end. Center, as you just saw, puts things in the center. But what I'm thinking we'll use here is actually space between. And space between will figure out how much space it needs to put between however many items you have and make everything look pretty. And that's exactly what's happening there. It's spacing it between. So we have all of our stats nice and spaced. Now, I could keep guessing what this number is, 230, 260, just to make it kind of go right to the edge. But that's a problem, because what if like someone has a bigger screen or a smaller screen? You, for the most part, want to try and stay away from fixed numbers in these kind of cases. So rather than giving a width, I'm going to put it back to the default, and it's going to look bad again. And that's because the width is like this. So there's a flex property. I think it's that. Flex grow. Hang on. Part of programming is remembering how to do things. Welcome to my new class on Google. Okay, flex. I think it's flex fill. I'm just going to kind of search like a human, like in human language, flex fill remaining space. Okay, and we can go here. So this is a site called, this is a site called Stack Overflow, and it is your new best friend because people ask questions here and you read them and you're like, yeah, I'm having that same problem. And then you can scroll down and see the answer. Stack Overflow is specific to programming, pretty much any language, but it's part of a whole system called Stack Exchange, which if we go to, I don't even know how to see it, but basically they have, Stack Exchange Network. If you go here, that didn't help. There's stuff for like technologies, and within there, there's stuff for like with Stack Overflow that we're looking at. There's stuff for specifically servers, stuff for Ubuntu, stuff for game development, all this great stuff. But Stack Overflow is our best friend. And the answers get ordered by whether they're accepted, whether they work, all that stuff. Okay, so this person's saying use the flex grow property to make a flex item consume this free space on the main axis. This property will expand. I thought that's what we did. Flex grow 1. And profile top right, that's why it's not working. Okay, so the way we did is actually correct, but I believe we need to also tell the parent of it to be a display flex. Okay, great. Now everything's messed up. Okay, so we told the parent to be display flex, which now is going to be like, well, if it's displaying flex, I'm going to try and put things here. And that's because flex goes left to right only by default. There's another property we can do called flex direction. So by default, it is row, meaning things are going to go over in a row. But if we change this one to column, we're going to have some lovely results. So the same thing's happening, but it's being, now things are being ordered this way. So that's good. And what's actually happening here is interesting. We have told, we did something called flex grow 1, and it is actually filling the space. It's filling the space all the way down this way, but we wanted it to fill this way. So I have to remember how to do that now. Flex strength. Flex and flex grow property. There's some other property I'm not thinking of. Flex basis. We're gonna get this. We're gonna get this, guys. I'm gonna switch it off the flex grow for a second because obviously that's not right. Okay, so I'm gonna do flex on alternate axis. Line items, line content. Okay, all right, new plan for now. I'm going to figure that out, but we're going to, we're just going to do kind of what we did before where we picked a width that looked good. Yeah, good. Okay, that's good for now. in our stats themselves, we want to give them a text align to center, and that'll make it so that, you know, the text and these things kind of align nicely. So that's good. We can get rid of our yellow, and we're off to the races. We're going to come back to fixing this after we get the follow buttons in there so that everything is aligned vertically as well. So we're going to go all the way to the top of our lovely CSS here and go to our buttons. And we're going to style our buttons. Okay, so buttons are, and we're going to style specifically A tags that are buttons, just to be really clear. Okay, so by default, links are, look, they're blue, they have an underline. First of all, let's just get rid of that text decoration. So and that's what the underline is, text decoration, none. We'll get rid of that. Then what we want to do, we want a background color on this thing. And if we go to our Photoshop file and use our eyedropper tool, I'm having trouble finding it at the moment. There it is. We get this lovely color, which I can copy to my clipboard and bring over here. We're also going to change its color to be white. I'm assuming that's the color there. So now look, we have a bit closer of a button. So that's all good, except there's a few things. We definitely want some padding on this. So, and I'm going to just guess right now that the padding, let's use this as the base, because the wide button we're going to handle a little bit differently. So it has a height of, let's say 24, so 12 pixels on the top. And on the left to right, it's a little bit bigger to give it that, you know, non-square with the, I guess it's actually the same. So we're just gonna give them a padding of 12 pixels. And that makes it, yeah, a little more like you would, you know, like you would expect. I think I also need to, yeah, I want to make them inline block elements so that that weird stuff doesn't happen where there's overlap. So it's being treated more like a span now, link tags, or sorry, more like a div. So we get that, you know, coming in the next line. And what else happens here? So there's a little bit of a border radius. It's not a full circle, so we'll just guess. You know, let's try 3 pixels and just see how it looks. So now they have this nice curve. I feel like looking at this, maybe I just measured wrong, but the left and right looks good, but it's definitely too tall. So what I'm going to do is actually say 6 pixels space 12. So what that means is on the top and bottom, 6, on the left and right, 12. That seems a little bit better. Okay, so we have our buttons. We'll come back to button wide later, but let's just go back to our bottom. And what do we want this to look like? We essentially, first of all, our profile CTA, which is right here, we definitely need some padding on it so it's not touching. So I'm going to just do a padding of 8 pixels, something like that. Padding top. Does that do anything? It's not doing anything. Never mind. We're going to do this all, fix this with Flexbox. Okay, so let me just give a background so we can see this again. Background color of yellow on this, and on the other one, which is the stats, background color of red. Did I not profile? Oh, I did dot. This should be a dash. That's why the padding wasn't working. Okay, so we have our 2 things here. So what I want to do on the element that we are saying flex direction column, so the container for this whole thing, we're going to do that justify content again. And we're going to say, let's do space between first, just to show that. So this added, you know, for this to fit in this container, the same amount of spacing here and here between this to make these things even. And that's nice, but what I really want to use is this other one called space evenly. And that will add spacing on the top, the middle, and the bottom to make things align as we want. Now you might be wondering, why the heck, you know, last time we used justify content, it was justifying left and right. Whenever you change the flex direction, everything to do with justify and everything to do with align, they shift. So when it's a flex direction column, which isn't the default, when we're using justify content, all the stuff is happening vertically instead of horizontally. It's a little bit complicated. I probably can't explain it that well. You kind of get used to doing it, but I'm also not used to doing it. I usually type it out and then it's wrong. And then I'm like, oh, I'll try the other thing. And then it ends up being fine. So we can do that, and that's good. The other thing I want to do is in the CTA itself, we're going to make this also a display flex. And doing that should change very little except for the fact that they got pushed right up against each other. And I'm going to go justify content. This one I want to do space between because I want this to touch here and I want this one to touch the edge here. And there we go. Now they're spaced nicely. Let's get rid of our background colors so that we can see how it looks. Now, the only thing I'd say that's different here is the fact that this button needs to be wider. So what we did is we said that the follow button has this class of button wide. So if we actually go up here and we've already stubbed it out, we can give this thing a specific width. And I could say, 150 pixels, for instance. And that kind of works. Now, giving it a width is one way to do it, but we also then need to make sure that our buttons have a text-aligned center. So I'm going to make all buttons, not just the wide ones, have a text-aligned center, and we should be fine. There we go. So this seems weird. I feel like the text is closer to the top than the bottom. I don't think it's just my eyes. And I think this just sometimes happens with certain fonts. So what we're actually going to do is make the top. We're going to redo this to say top of, let's say 10 pixels, right. So top is 10, right is 12, bottom is 6, left is 12. Goes like a clock when you're doing it in this shorthand. But then that moved that guy. Why is that happening? Okay, I'm going to keep the text align center. Okay, let's experiment with something here. Okay, we're going to try it this way. I've never done this before on a button. We're going to do display flex. We're going to go justify content center. And we're going to go align items center. I can't tell if that looks better, but let's just do that instead. So essentially, we're just telling it to center its things. Did I do the right one? Content. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. It looks good to me. We got our button. We got this. We could play around with this number to make it, closer. Yeah, I feel like that looks fine to me. All right. We got our profile top. Let's compare it to our Photoshop. Yeah, it's not perfect. In fact, we should give it a font weight of bold. Yeah, I mean, I know it's not the exact same font, but it's a little closer. There we go. We got our dudes happening. Everything looks good. All right, we got him, we got hair. And I'm pretty happy with this section. I know it's not perfect. In fact, why is something looks weird here? Stat itself. Oh, okay. Going back here, I'm just going to try something a little bit differently. Dot stats. Width. Justify content space. I'm going to do space evenly here as well, because that'll put spacing on the sides as well. And is that more what it looks like? Yeah, that's closer. I don't know if it's perfect. And in fact, if we played with this width a little bit, it would probably look a little better. No, it doesn't. So whatever, that's fine. Things are looking okay in my books. And if it's not perfect, we can always fix it later. Okay, let's, we got a little more time, so let's at least get this next part done. Over to the HTML. So within, we're still, to me, this is still part of the profile. Actually, no. We're going to make this a whole new section. This isn't really part of profile top anymore. Call this div with the class of, we'll call it profile info, sure. And inside here, we're going to have a class of username with the word username. And then we're going to have a class of bio with the word, your bio goes, I'm going to write something like that. Your bio goes here. This is a test, etc. And then one more class of, we'll call it just link. And in here, let's put a real link. And I'll just make it go to nothing. I'll just use the number sign and type in like, bit.ly.com/abc123. Go there now. And I think that's all the HTML we need. So we'll go over here and all right. So I'm thinking one thing now. So we added padding here and all that was good, but I almost feel like, I mean, no, this is fine. Let's just do this. So profile-info, I'm going to apply the same amount of padding we did, and we'll put in this flex as well. So I want to just kind of keep using flex. All right, actually, no, there's no need to use flex here. This is a very simple element. So padding 10 pixels, that made it good. We can go here and style the username specifically and give it a font size. Back to our Photoshop. This is size 34, so we will do 17. And it looks like there's a font weight of bold. And we come back here, looking good. This should be pretty easy. .bio. We'll give it a margin top of 8 pixels just to space it out. Font size of 14. I don't know if that's correct, but okay. Let's actually go to Photoshop and figure out what this font size is. 28 so far. Oh, I was right with 14. And what's its color? Is it using the same color we've been using? I don't think so. Oh, no, it is. Yeah, it's our body color, so it is correct. Let's see if, okay, we'll ignore that. Okay, I also want to give this bio a width because you'll notice in the design that for whatever reason, the bio kind of starts to break here. So this has a width of, let's say it's like, 260 or something. So we'll give it a width of 130, dividing it by 2 real quick. That way the text kind of goes to a new line. I also feel like the line height here could be a little bit more, and that's going to space our text out just a bit nicer like that. All right. And last but not least, the dot link. So the link is like the container, dot link is the container for the actual link itself. So just all we need to really worry about is styling the margin there. Whereas we want to style the actual link by putting an A there. I'm assuming the same font size, 14 pixels, but it definitely has a different color. If we go back here, we can grab this color. I think we've used before for the hashtags. So we got that sweet color, and we need to turn off text decoration so that it doesn't have an underline because that's so old school. There we go. I feel like these could be squished a little closer together. So I'm going to make it half of it, margin top of 4 on these two things. Sweet. All right, and does this, I just want to check, does this stuff all line up? No, it doesn't. So it looks like the username actually lines up not with the colored circle, but the inner circle. So we're going to compensate for that by, in our padding here, rather than making it 10, which is what we did before, we'll just trial and error it. Let's do 24 and just kind of, or sorry, 14, and just see if like this lines up. Pretty close. Looks like 15 will do it. So that is helping us align that with that. Yeah, that looks aligned now. I feel like there's too much space here. So we'll do padding. We'll still keep it 10 pixels on the top and bottom, but 15 on the left and right. And that'll keep things more or less aligned. There we go. Okay, we got a few minutes. Rather than moving on to the other one, let's do some stuff with these fonts. So we're just using the default serif font, I think. Yeah, we're using Arial, Helvetica as a fallback, and sans serif. I feel like the font is different though in this. And I'm not sure if, see, they're using Arial for that. This is saying Myriad Pro. Is that just because I don't have the correct font? That could definitely be the case. Arial, Myriad Pro. What? Okay, so it is Arial everywhere except for this link. Or except for the bio. That could just be a mistake. But what I want to do rather than using Arial is let's just review kind of how we could include a different font. So we're going to go to something called Google Web Fonts, and we're going to click on this guy. And rather than, right now we're relying on people having Arial or a fallback of Helvetica or just using whatever sans serif default font they have. And honestly, for Arial, this is a pretty safe bet. Every computer probably in the world has one of these two fonts. But let's assume, maybe it's a more complicated font And what we're going to do is find a font that's similar to Arial and Helvetica, but be able to include it and know that every computer will get it, and enter Google Web Fonts. So to just demonstrate this, I'm going to pick a font that is like not correct, and then we'll come back and replace it. Now, we have been over this in an earlier course, so I'm going to move a little bit faster and not explain everything, but let's find a really funky font. Yeah, here we go. Look, this is funky. And I'm going to click select this style. Actually, since our last class, and I noticed this using Google Fonts the other day, Google Fonts has changed. So this is probably now the most up-to-date tutorial on Google Fonts, because it's just a different interface. So you click select there, and you can review it. You can see, you can add different styles to it. So select styles. I think this only has the one style. Yeah, this is just regular 400, fine. If you click on embed here, you can see the two options. So I would prefer the import option. Now what I'm going to do is only copy the stuff within these style tags, because we're going to put this directly in our CSS file that we already have. So right at the, I'm literally doing it right at the very top, we're going to include this. And including it doesn't do anything other than the fact that we have access to that font now. So the other instruction is, actually setting the font family. So rather than font family Arial, I'm going to paste in the line it gives me, which is just really the name of the font up here. Still with a fallback, because if some people have certain permissions turned off on their computer, or maybe like, I don't know, JavaScript disabled or something, they might not get this download, or maybe their internet was working when it loaded the page and stopped. Anyway, it's still good to have a fallback. And cursive is just like a font you can always fall back to. It's not this particular font name. It's the same as putting like serif or sans serif or mono. It just means it's going to use your computer's like cursive default font. And now all we have to do is go back here, and we're going to see our whole site looks like this. And that's because, you know, we included a really shitty font. I mean, this font has its place, don't get me wrong, but it's not readable. But I just want to demonstrate. And even if we go back to our index.html, because we've set our root to use that font by default, it's everywhere. Wow. Just take in how much better Instagram could look if I was the designer of it. All right. Enough jokes aside. Let's go here. I'm going to remove all. Look, oh, you got this little guy. Look at that. You don't have any fonts yet. Okay, I don't. So let's search for fonts. Go back to Google Fonts, and we're going to turn off. We're going to check on display, and we're going to check on sans serif, because we definitely want a font to that sort of that idea. And I'm going to use Roboto. Roboto is like Google's kind of like default serif font or sans serif font, and they have something called Roboto Slab, which is like their equivalent of it for sans serif, or for serif rather. They go well together. And we're going to just pick a few styles. We definitely want the regular right here. I think it's always nice to have a few different options. So I'm not gonna go as far as needing thin, but we're gonna have light, and we're gonna make sure we have you know, a medium one. And I think that is pretty good. So we'll go back here, and we're gonna copy and paste. We're gonna go to this import tab. We're gonna copy and paste this, and we're gonna paste it here and replace this. And we're gonna grab this and put it here. And now we should see that stuff, if we can find it, goes back to a little bit better. So there you go. So now it doesn't look that much different, but we are using a custom web font now. All right, the one thing that's missing from this page that I did notice is we don't have a tab bar yet. And in an app, you want to always have that tab bar. So all we're going to do is copy our tab bar from the home page and paste it here. And there we go, it's there. And because of the fixed positioning, if this page was really long, and it's not yet, but we'll be able to, similar to the home page, be able to scroll. One other thing I want to do really quick is just to make this kind of more a workable thing is in my header where there's this button, I'm going to wrap this in an A tag and go like that. And what we're going to do is actually make this go to its href index.html. That way I can actually click this and look, we're back. And similarly on this page, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do this on like the first post, you know, rather than going through all of them. But in my avatar, I am going to around the entire avatar, I think. See if it works. Href equals, and I'm going to make this a profile.html. and refresh. And now this guy is clickable. Now we could go through the whole page and make all these guys clickable, all this, all this. Feel free to do that, of course. I'm not for now. But yeah, we have this nice little way to get between them, which is, in my opinion, a lot better than, you know, clicking on here and changing the name. Anyways, that's where we're going to leave it. Feel free to send me a message, an email, an Instagram, or whatever if you want me to send you the current state of the code base as it lives now, in case you are trying to follow along and maybe are stuck. So that's all for now. We are going to sign out. Tomorrow, we will continue, and we are going to continue the profile. So there's, I know I stopped sharing my screen now, but there is kind of like some story scroller thing for putting your highlights, which I think we're actually at first going to skip, because I'd rather move on to like the photo grid and maybe even do like the list mode versus the grid mode and see how all that stuff sort of could work. And yeah, after that, I feel like we're gonna be in a place where, yeah, we can make more screens, but I think we're gonna be in a good spot to actually like start to wrap this into something a little more usable. For instance, we have a lot of repeated HTML for like the posts. It'd be nice if there was a way that we could kind of make reusable snippets of code that that are dynamic, and we're not, for instance, if I wanted to make the username clickable, how would I, how can I do that in just one spot and not go through and copy and paste? So that's, yeah, we're gonna finish up the profile, or at least, part of the profile, and do some housekeeping. And then maybe we'll also strip some icons from this Photoshop file to make it a little more closer to what we're trying to copy. And then, yeah, deal with some of the interactivity elements I've been kind of alluding to, and that will be really fun. All right, thanks for joining. Catch you soon, and have a nice rest of your day.